So here I have a pre-created, I have a little kind of dummy organization. So we have an admin, a director, we have the engineering user, and we have human resources. We also have a user for interns, but it's disabled because maybe we don't have any interns at the moment. So with these kinds of roles designated, then we can start doing things like creating policies for them. So let's say under File Manager, I have a director bucket, I have a development bucket, human resources bucket, um, and this is where work is done. Let's say this is maybe staging areas. This is where they share resources. Maybe each programmer has a little folder that has like some of the Git projects that they're working on. If we jump over to policies, we can see the list of our buckets. So let's say I want to make the policy first for engineering. Engineering would need to have access to the development bucket. They'll have full access to that one. And maybe they would also want access to graphics, because maybe if they're doing some web work, they want to include icons and those kinds of things. But they don't have access to upload or delete any of the graphics. They can just see them and download them. And maybe that's all they need. So we'll create that one. Something like the admin user, they would probably want to get full access to like everything. So development, director, graphics, human resources. And then kind of the opposite of the admin, we'll have the intern user. So this is someone who has pretty piddly permissions. In development, they can maybe list, read, and write, but we don't quite trust them to delete, because I've seen a lot of horror stories of people having permissions that they maybe shouldn't have. And that's all they're going to get. So with these policies created, we can jump back over to the users and start applying them. So interns will get the intern policy, engineering gets their policy, admin gets their policy. And if we were to hop over to Minio and sign in as engineering, we can see that they have the development and the graphics bucket. But if we were to sign back out and return as interns, oh, right, they're disabled. So that actually won't work. If we enable them quickly, then here they are. They have development. But if I wanted to delete this, they do not have permissions to do that because they're just an intern. So that's a pretty basic example of within an organization, how you might kind of structure some of the policies and how you'd approach it. What is really probably a better way is because this is kind of suggesting that engineering is all sharing the same login. What is probably a more reasonable way is if you were to give individual users, you were to create a group. Here I've created one called developers. And let's say I want to move John into the developers group. And all of the developers get the engineering policy that I've already created. Then now, John effectively inherits the same policies as everyone else that's in the development or engineering group. But he doesn't have to share a sign-in with anybody. So that way it's more traceable. So there's kind of a record of which individual user did any particular action as opposed to a shared login, which is obviously from a security standpoint, shared logins aren't great. But that's where the kind of groups come in, as you can move people into or out of groups. You can apply blanket policies to everyone in that group. It just makes it a little more manageable. But that's still kind of suggesting that we have teams of people, that all the users are actual people, and that might not necessarily be the case. So if we're kind of running with the surveillance video kind of context, what we might end up doing is creating a user that's just, we'll call it our surveillance in. And this will actually be a machine, not particularly a person, and we'll create a policy for them. Let's say the surveillance video, we want to go to media. So they will have maybe list and write, but this user, this surveillance cam user, won't actually have permission to read or delete the videos that they are uploading. So this could be coming straight from the S3 bucket or the S3 input from the surveillance video, and then that way it has just the least amount of privileges that it needs in order to do its job, which is generally best practice. So the least can go wrong. And then let's say, I guess we already have an admin user. So let's say the admin user, I guess we'll have to make a new one. So if this media is where the surveillance video is ending up, the surveillance cameras are writing. What we want to do if we're a user is to be able to read. If we're just kind of day to day, we might want to read and view the surveillance video, but maybe we still don't want to assign delete because deleting surveillance video is a pretty heavy operation. It's my understanding that with a lot of video surveillance kind of management software, it auto ages out, so you don't really need to go out of your way to manually delete things. So let's say we don't actually assign anything delete, just out of caution and out of best practice. But this user can maybe just list and read. So that way you have kind of a producer and a consumer for this surveillance video that's kind of going on. So that might be another way that you approach using IAM in order to enhance your security, ensure that only the users or the beings that they have the least amount of privileges possible in order to still do their job effectively. And that will reduce headaches, increase your security, and just generally be best practice.
This probably covers like 95% of what most people will do. In the future, it's pretty likely we'll add some functionality to be able to connect to like Microsoft Active Directory or other LDAP servers. So rather than creating users in here, you'll get a list of your users in your corporate directory and the groups, and just be able to apply them directly to buckets that way.
So this is what Henry's showing right here is an organization. The ability exists here to create a permissioned bucket for a company. And you can make that just giving permissions to one user. We expect to provide a very light flavored interface to the relayer for people to be able to log in and look at certain things, but not be able to manage certain other things. And of course, if you just create permissions for a company in a bucket, then you just need to give them URL credentials and so forth so that they can actually access it through VM or whatever tool that they're going to be used. The piece that we're missing there that came up today was that we don't have any way to bill you for that separately on your invoices. You get lumped in with that whole relayer access key.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that because that was something that came to mind. So we've discussed a bit with relayer MTs of how you can have multiple concurrent relayers running on the same machine for different organizations and allocate resources that way. But it's also totally possible, and in some situations would make more sense actually to have the same relayer just have different independent buckets, because if you're just a user and assuming the permissions are set up correctly, you can have access to a bucket and have no idea what else is on the machine. You don't know if that relayer is only running your stuff or if it's running the stuff for like 5 different people all with their own bucket. If you are the partner, you're in total control of whether you want to of how you want to allocate entire relayers or just buckets of relayers. And if you do go that second way of splitting off buckets within relayers to different users, some of which maybe have nothing in common and don't need to know that each other exist, then the way that you would manage that is in the IAM tab and through that approach. And then you can even take it further as well. So with the policies, I didn't really talk about JSample because that was in the video, but this is getting more into actually writing direct kind of S3 policy. If you either use a tool that assists you or learn a little bit of how this structure works. Then you can even do like folder level sharing. So in this sample, we have a shared bucket where users have access to potentially read but not write to or not delete things in other folders within the same bucket. So you can really split things out to a pretty high resolution, either relayer level, bucket level, or even within the same bucket, folder level. Where we were going to head next is with Jay, where we were going to learn about certs and proxies and all those fun things.